Awesome. She's here.
Hi,
Hi. How are you doing?
I'm okay.
Awesome. I'm so happy this is working. Like, you don't understand
Yeah,
that
me
I'm
too.
able to see you and you're able to
Yeah.
see me and hear me.
So I had
Awesome.
I had to switch to my Wi-Fi. So my
Ah,
Yep.
because I realized it kind of took a while to connect. I was like, Jesus, not again, not tonight. No.
I know
Because
this the internet all over has been so horrible.
yes, I guess because, most persons are home. Um,
Yes.
yeah, and no persons are being homeschooled but I'm glad that it works.
Yeah, me too.
So thank you for joining with me. So guys, I'm Chantaeu Munroe, co-founder of Reach, Inspire, Ignite, and tonight I have with me Dentrecia Blanchette. Is that how I like your last name? I really like your last name.
Thank you.
So she is a creative nurturer from the island of St. Kitts. Big up all those who hail from St. Kitts in this conversation or this live.
Yeah.
She is also the founder of Sugar for Your Heart, which is an awesome name for ministry, by the way, too. It's a ministry that focuses on creating quiet and safe spaces where individuals can explore and better understand and appreciate emotional and spiritual wellness. She is also a counseling psychology graduate student at California Southern University who is committed to dispelling the myths and stigma associated with seeking mental health treatment, specifically in the Caribbean and Christian community. She's also a writer. I read some of your work. It's pretty
You've been
impressive.
stalking me.
Yes, I've been properly stalking you. So, guys, give Dentrecia some love. She's hailing all the way from St. Kitts. And this is your first live, yeah?
Yeah, this is my first live, so hopefully I don't press something wrong.
Don't worry, I'll help guide you, So how has your day been?
It was okay. So I actually had an emergency before this.
Oh,
So it's pretty ad hoc, a lot of ad hoc requests.
yeah.
Working remotely from home is new.
Uh-huh.
It's a new experience. So
Mhm.
it's a lot of adjusting, but it was a good day nonetheless. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That is pretty good. I mean, it's always good to be on our toes just in case something unexpected happens.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure you were able to manage awesome. So that's good. All right, so what led you to become a mental health advocate?
Sure. So apart from doing the schoolwork and apart from
Mhm.
volunteering and getting the experience, I went through just a really tough transition after a breakup. And I think when we think about breakups, we know how our emotions can be. And it was
Yeah.
so interesting. I found myself in therapy, and
Hmm.
my journey to therapy as a client really was something that opened up my eyes to the client's experience. So,
Hmm.
sometimes you read about what your clients may experience, but it doesn't
Yeah,
hit
yeah.
home until you are
You
experiencing it.
actually go through yeah,
Right.
trust me, I
So,
understand.
I had to deal with a lot of the stigma that I didn't even know I had about mental health, even though I was going through with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
studies and the work, and I had
Hmm.
to move through a lot of the limitations that I would have had within myself to get to a place of wholeness. And I say that
Mm.
very intentionally. And
Yeah.
what I experienced within therapy, it absolutely made me more passionate for allowing persons to
Mm.
feel safe, to feel
Yeah,
seen,
yeah.
and to be supported. And I know that a lot of persons, when you're in the field, you know all the terms, you know all,
Yeah,
the
the language.
diagnoses,
Yes,
right?
yes.
But then when you speak to persons, you understand that they don't have the terms, they don't know what they're
Hmm.
experiencing, that
Hmm.
educational aspect of it
Hmm.
is missing. So I said, I want to at least do some psychoeducation and
Hmm.
give persons a safe space for free. Because when I did
Right.
therapy, I paid for it, and
Yeah.
not everybody can afford to
And
pay for therapy.
mm,
So I said,
hmm.
I want persons to get that warmth that I got from my therapist
Yeah.
free of cost. And so that really transitioned me into being an advocate. And I've been doing advocacy work from since then, honestly,
Hmm.
and I love it.
I can imagine. The best part about, I guess, doing what you do is having your own personal experience and then having the book knowledge on top of it so that you can really relate to people and
Yep.
break down some walls that I guess for someone who just found it exciting to do to just go study it and just have the language but not the relatability.
Right.
It I can see where it definitely would create a safe space for
So,
persons.
so it's so interesting because you expect to see resistance in a
Mhm.
session. You expect to see a client going back and forth with their emotions, struggling a
Yeah,
bit. But when you are yourself, you're in the client's position, you're more compassionate with them.
yeah.
So you're not pushing them so hard
Yeah, to
because
get it out, like you need to be
within
better.
themselves it's a
Hmm.
struggle,
Yeah.
and it's not as easy as snapping your finger and
Oh
you're
yeah.
okay. So it's a
Yeah.
deep dark journey that I'm really thankful that I went through, and it
Yeah.
has made me so much more compassionate, and I think
Mhm.
that is what makes great clinicians.
Oh yes.
They
I
are humans first, and they
mm-hmm.
understand when you come into session, you come with stuff and you
Mm-hmm.
come with a lot of hesitation.
Yeah. 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 Especially because you don't know the person.
Yeah, yeah.
Boy, what you're doing is right up my alley, but we'll talk about that another time. In talking about all of this mental health, sometimes I get the feeling that many people don't fully understand what mental health is and the role it plays in our lives. So, could you shed a little light on what mental health is, how it affects us, or what it means to you?
So we each have mental health. So mental health is something we all have. It really
Hmm.
speaks to our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings, and then
Hmm.
how our actions are impacted by that. So
Yeah,
we speak a lot about physical health. So
yeah,
when you feel sick, you go to a doctor. But
yeah.
when you're feeling, a bit low mood or
So,
you're
yeah.
anxious, your first thought is not to see a therapist or a clinician.
Hmm. Yeah,
And so we have to be really intentional with just giving mental health the same energy that we
yeah,
give
yeah.
physical health. So we each
Hmm.
have it. And then
Hmm.
it's on a spectrum. So we know on, the further one side of the spectrum, your
Hmm.
mental health, you're doing okay, you can cope with stresses, you're
Hmm.
moving through life pretty okay despite what
Yeah.
is being thrown at you. And then you move on in the middle of the spectrum, the
Hmm.
continuum, where you're struggling a bit, but you're still functioning in your everyday life.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then it moves to the illnesses where you cannot help
Mhm.
yourself or you're
Yeah.
not functioning how you
Hmm.
should. Um, and you need help. You need
Hmm.
professional help. You can't just do it on your own. And so it's a
Hmm.
continuum that I want persons to appreciate. So you might start off on the good end of the spectrum. But let's
Yeah.
just say a hurricane come, hurricane season is
Yes.
coming. A
Fast
hurricane
approaching
come.
too.
A hurricane come and it raises your stress level. You're experiencing PTSD, and you
Hmm.
find that you've moved because of one stressful incident. You've moved from one end of the continuum to the other. And
Yeah,
so we're
yeah.
extremely vulnerable. And
Hmm.
so when we think about mental health, we have to think about I am vulnerable. And so there are things that I have to do to make sure that I stay
Make it.
on the good side of the mental
Yeah,
health continuum.
yeah. And it's I often say that one of the hardest things for persons to do is to acknowledge their truth or their struggle. They pass it off as something that's so casual and I'm okay or I will be okay. So there's no need to really examine what this emotion is. And then the stigma of therapist, I don't need a therapist, that sounds, you know. Um, and so just I'm gonna dig a little deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So I was reading briefly in the DSM-5 manual, that's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was very enlightened to learn that there's a difference between mental health, mental issues, and mental disorders.
Mm-hmm.
Um, could you kind of give a brief definition of each? So, what is mental health? What is mental issues? What are some mental disorders?
Mm-hmm. So mental health is what we spoke about. It is
Mm-hmm.
that general health with your
Right.
emotions, your thoughts, your feelings.
Right.
And a disorder is any condition that significantly impacts your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, and then your
Mm-hmm.
actions. And we know
Mm-hmm.
that there are a whole bunch of mental health illnesses that can, come upon us or we can develop over time. When we
Mm-hmm.
think about onset for most of them, it starts in your teenage years. Some start
Mm-hmm.
when you're a bit older. So we
Mm-hmm.
have to be careful with that. But it's any condition that really impacts your thoughts, your feelings, and your
Right.
emotions, and then your actions. And
Mm-hmm.
then I want to share this because many times we self diagnose. So we go on
Mm.
Dr. Google and we say, I have
Oh yes,
XYZ.
the famous
And
Google.
so a mental health illness has to be diagnosed by a clinician.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when they are diagnosing you, they literally have to go through a step. So they have to think about your family history. They
Mm-hmm.
also have to think about, um, have I ruled out any physical illnesses? Because we
Right.
know that physical illnesses can impact
Can
our minds
mm-hmm.
and our
Mm-hmm.
moods. And
Mm-hmm.
then we have to do the assessment. And the assessment now will tell you, Shauna or Dentrecia or Bill or Peter has XYZ. And
Mm-hmm.
that is when your therapist will work with you now to kind of create an action plan to help you to move through or better manage whatever
Mm-hmm.
the illness is. So it
Right.
has to be diagnosed. There are some times where we can listen to you and we can, based on experience, we can say, okay,
Right. Right.
I think, you might be experiencing XYZ, he may be experiencing
Mm-hmm.
depression, but
Mm-hmm.
all times we have to do that assessment.
Right. Boy, it's I guess pulling away the layers to really get down to the truth. And then the sad part is that some of the stuff started from way back when that you probably did
Right.
not even think about would affect you in that way.
Mhm.
It's crazy. So can you touch on some of the types of mental health disorders that exist?
Sure, absolutely. So there are a few, but I'm going to speak about the main ones. So we
Mm-hmm.
know about mood disorders, we know about
Mm-hmm.
depression,
Mm-hmm.
and I see a lot of depression in a lot of young persons,
Mm-hmm.
and there are different types of depression. So we
Right.
know that there is persistent depression disorder, major depressive disorder. We know that
Mm-hmm.
there is post-mortem, you're a mom and you get pregnant and you feel a bit depressed, and
Yeah.
that's an interesting one for me because I'm not a mom. But in a lot of the sessions, a lot of the young ladies who are under 30,
Mm-hmm.
when they listen to the session, they said, "Oh my goodness, I didn't even know that this is what I was struggling with." They
Yeah.
just knew that they felt sad after giving
Okay.
birth and they
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel connected with their child and they
Yeah.
didn't even know that it was an illness.
Yeah, it's
So
a
that
thing.
that is
Yeah.
a huge one. And then when you travel, you go to Canada and all of a sudden it's winter. It's winter and you're
Culture shock.
feeling you're feeling sad, you're feeling low mood, you lose your
Yeah.
appetite. There is seasonal depression as well. You know?
I
So
didn't
if
know
you there that is really impacting. So we see a lot of persons, you're from the Caribbean, you're accustomed to your sun.
that.
But when you go and you experience winter, all of a sudden your
Hmm.
mood change and
Hmm.
you just feel very overwhelmed by emotions. That is a type of depression as well. And
Wow.
then there is that type of depression where we don't speak about as women a lot, where we know we call it PMS, but there is
Mm.
severe PMS where you
Mm.
literally feel so so sad before your period, before your menstrual
Ah,
cycle,
yeah.
and you're
Uh-huh.
just agitated and you're like, it's probably PMS, but it is a
Yeah.
form of depression as well. So
Wow.
it's a mood disorder, and then there is bipolar disorder, and then
Mm-hmm.
we go a bit further into another common one, which is anxiety disorders. And
Mm.
anxiety disorders, there are so many. So there is general anxiety disorders that
Mm-hmm.
really speak to excessive worry for over 6 months. And then
Mm-hmm.
there is panic disorders that are
Mm-hmm.
all about panic attacks,
Yeah.
which is a huge one again for a lot
Yeah.
of young persons. And
Yes.
then there is um, post-traumatic stress disorders, where a lot of people think it's just military people that experience post-traumatic
Mm-hmm.
stress disorder. But if you experience abuse, if you experience violence, if you
Mm-hmm.
yourself you're listening to someone giving an account of what was
It
traumatic
can,
for
yeah.
them, it
Yeah.
can
It,
make you highly stressful as well and
mm-hmm.
impact you and
Mm-hmm.
move into a disorder. So you see
Oh,
how
wow.
vulnerable we are.
Yes, exactly. I
And then
mean,
And those are the main two, anxiety and mood disorders. And then we know
Yeah.
that there are personality disorders.
Yes.
And then one that I think we don't speak enough about within our region are eating disorders.
Mm.
Anorexia, and we know, body dysmorphic disorder, where you feel as if
Wow.
I should be really fit and I'm too fat. But you look okay,
Yeah.
but in your
Yeah.
mind you're seeing
Mm-hmm.
fat. it
Yeah.
can it can really go far left. And so we
Yeah.
really have to be mindful of how vulnerable we are. And a lot
Uh-huh.
of the things that we take for granted, they can either go far left
Oh,
or
yeah.
they can remain in the middle. So those are a few that I
Mm-hmm.
generally see, and we know that there are others as well that manifest themselves in our Caribbean
Mm-hmm.
islands. Um, but those are the major ones that I see, and I know they're major, but they a lot of people struggle with them and don't get the right help
Right.
to move through what they're struggling with.
Right. I see we have a question. Somebody, Jadine asked, are there physical conditions caused by these mental disorders or trauma?
So absolutely. So when we are experiencing high stress or a trauma,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes many of us we respond to it emotionally. So we
Mm.
feel sad, we feel nervous, we feel anxious. Then there are some of us we respond through it behaviorally. So we get agitated, we're
Mm-hmm.
extra angry, we're
Mm-hmm.
sleeping a lot,
Yes.
we can't do anything. And then there is that physical aspect of it where
Yeah.
your heart is beating really fast, or you're
Mm-hmm.
feeling very slow, or you're not doing anything but you're feeling burdened.
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you're feeling like your soul is tired. And so
Yeah.
I realize that a lot of persons within the Caribbean, because we don't speak about our mental health, a lot of
Yeah.
times they would go to the doctor for physical
Yes.
symptoms. Doctor, I have a headache, my back hurting me, my chest
Yeah.
giving me pain. And then when they do all the tests, they realize, whoa, you're physically fine, but is your mind
Is
okay?
your mind?
Is
Yes.
your mind okay?
Yeah.
And so we call those somatic symptoms, where because of your emotional state, your
Mm-hmm.
physical body responds.
That's
And I
the
want to
response.
say this, like I had a really interesting, case where this young girl's her grandmother died, and she
Mm-hmm.
didn't give herself permission to grieve.
Oh
Yeah,
my.
so she thought she
Wow.
was handling it okay. And
Mm-hmm.
she said that she was in university, and she said she didn't cry, she didn't feel away, she felt
Yes.
totally fine. And it was
Boy,
her roommate
denial.
who said to her, girl, you're crying in your sleep, you're crying
Oh
in your
no.
sleep. And so sometimes our
Wow.
bodies are so stressed, our
Mm-hmm.
bodies, they're holding in so much, and we're
Yeah.
not giving our bodies time to release
Yes.
the trauma, the anger,
Hurt.
the whole
Everything.
bunch of
Yeah.
emotions, and it
Yeah.
finds a way to release it. And
Oh
we know
yeah.
of persons who, they're fine, but when they jog, when they exercise, they begin crying for no
Mm-hmm.
reason.
And I don't know why.
And they don't know why. It's
Yeah.
really because your body is holding in all of that
All of that.
stress,
Yeah.
all of that emotional trauma. So it really pays for us to pay attention to how we are
Yeah.
physically,
Yeah.
because it's a high indicator at times that we're going
Yeah.
through something extremely emotional.
Wow, boy, Dentrecia, you're just like, there are a lot of things here that I know the audience, even myself, didn't know in terms of mental health. And I must commend you. You're awesome. How
I
you
live and
deliver
breathe
the information.
it.
I know I tell people it's so important that you do emotional checks on yourself, because and it's okay to talk to somebody, it's okay to vent, it's okay to be vulnerable, because as human beings, just by simply asking somebody how they are and they decide to release their emotions onto you, you're sucking that in without even realizing it, you know? So boy, people, I hope y'all are listening and taking notes.
I had when I made a presentation to high school. So I said, when you are feeling down, what do you do? And it was a school in a rural area, and they said they go to their grandmother for some bush tea, and for some good pep talk. And so I know that there are. So I don't even know if you
Because
guys
tea
call it
helps
bush tea,
everything.
right? So we have to consider the cultural nuances a lot of times when we are dealing with persons and their mental health. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
persons, before they even think about a therapist, they're going to the grandmother, they're going to their best friend.
Yes,
A lot of
yes,
persons go to their pastor
yes,
before they even go to a clinician. And it's just, the cultural norm that we just have to appreciate. But it's
yeah.
okay to see a clinician and to speak to someone who is outside of your situation,
Yes, yes, yeah.
but they are skilled to help you to navigate yourself through the
Right.
situation.
Yeah. Because half the things you're going through or you're feeling, you probably don't understand yourself
Yep.
to really say, okay, all right, this is that.
Yes.
Oh, I have a headache, so oh, it's soon gone. I'm good. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on people managing their mental health in everyday situations?
Mm-hmm.
Considering the stress they face with money, making money, the anxiety of relationship, and the pressure of just work life.
So let's just get it out there that every single facet of our life can impact our mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So your job, whether it's toxic or it's just not connecting to you, you no longer feel connected to, the mission of the organization, it can have a heavy burden on your
Mm-hmm.
mental health. So sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
only think that, childhood factors, we only think that family factors,
Mm-hmm.
traumas, biological reasons can impact
Right.
our mental health. But these everyday situations, your job, your relationships, you know,
Mm-hmm.
your money, it can really play a number on you. And so I
Yeah.
want persons to begin to identify what is the reality in my life. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you are a single mother and money is tight, you are
Mm-hmm.
most times you're gonna be short fused. You know, if you don't have help from
Right.
wherever, you're
Right.
going to feel stretched emotionally, and
Mm-hmm.
that can impact your mental health. And then let's not even speak about our workplaces, because we're
Oh,
there all the
Jesus.
time. We're there all the time. And whether it
Yep.
is a toxic boss, whether it is everybody in the office just bad mind
Mm-hmm.
and their chat, like honestly, it's too much. It's too much, but it impacts
Oh,
our
yes.
mental health. So it's the
Mm-hmm.
reason why we say really assess what is your reality. So if my reality
Mm-hmm.
is, my relationship is toxic or my partner
Mm-hmm.
is not understanding me, before you
Mm-hmm.
can even do anything to better the situation, you have to
Mm-hmm.
be real with what
With
is the
yourself.
reality. So if you know
Mm-hmm.
that, because of COVID-19, I lose my job, you're
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable. Your mental
Mm-hmm.
health is vulnerable right now. If
Yeah.
you know that your boss is always on you, extra critical, and you already have a very vulnerable self-esteem, it can
Mm-hmm.
impact your mental health. So we have to be mindful of the different facets of our lives. But that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that we become overwhelmed by them. It doesn't mean that we allow them to have their way with us. It simply
Mm-hmm.
means that we have to kind of step back and really take
And if
control of
I,
the
yeah.
things we can take control of.
Mm-hmm.
Because for
Like it.
many persons, you're in a toxic job and you have to think, maybe it's time for me to create a plan, an exit plan from this job. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
time for me to go back to school so that I can at least get a few extra
Yeah.
dollars on the job. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's time for me to quit my job. I know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
persons, they make that tough decision because of the stress to quit their job.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then we think about relationships. So you know that hello, when we're in relationships, it is
Yeah. The
difficult for us.
excuses.
we,
The
Girl,
excuses we tell
it's
ourselves.
difficult for us to walk away. Listen, he can be bad mind, toxic, doing all the
All of
works,
the above. Yep.
but there is that emotional attachment to it that
Mm.
we have to deal with. We have to
Like
deal with it. But sometimes we
yeah.
have to assess, maybe I need to step away from him. Maybe I need to speak
Mm-hmm.
to him about how we are relating. Maybe I need to see a relationship, a couples therapist to deal with
Mm-hmm.
us. You have
Mm-hmm.
to literally say, okay, what are my options and what can I do within my power right now to manage all the
Mm-hmm.
different factors in my
All the
life.
mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Boy, it's you mentioned relationships and it's like comfort food, or those persons who you're not supposed to have dairy stuff, milk, cheese, and you still have it anyways because you're just so hooked. But then at some point you have to stop because it does get worse in terms of how these things affect you, you
But
know? But
what I've realized is that a lot of us, we move into relationships by default because of the models
mm,
that we saw, because of
yes,
what
yes.
happened to us. We don't even know that we are responding from a place of hurt.
From a,
We don't
yeah,
even know that
yeah.
we are responding to this guy because he has similar qualities to our abuser, and we haven't even
Mm-hmm,
addressed that.
mm-hmm.
We don't even know because we feel financially secure with him,
Yeah.
so we, cover our
Ignore
eyes
everything else.
to
Yeah.
whatever he's doing. And so it's very dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to take into consideration that there are so many factors that keep us stuck in relationships. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
not always, I'm going done with him, goodbye, adios, farewell. Like literally, we have to do
Yeah.
some deep work.
Mm-hmm.
I was speaking to one of our ladies in our sessions, and she
Mm-hmm.
mentioned that her father had abused her, and she said she
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that it was wrong until she did therapy
Wow.
because of the grooming
The
in the
group,
house.
yes, yes, I was just
So
about to say.
sometimes we don't even know that we are in a toxic relationship
Mm,
until we are in a
until,
healthy space where
yes.
somebody can say, hello, what happened to you
What?
is not
Yeah.
normal. And
Wow.
we need to work through what
Mm-hmm.
that trauma did to you,
Mm-hmm.
in a real way for you to even have healthier, more fulfilling relationships in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So it's heavy. So relationships, you can handle your money, you can handle your job, you can handle your fitness. But when it comes to relationships, listen,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
need some extra prayers with that.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Like I I'm there with you. I'm there. I'm there. And it's now causing me to go into this. At some point,
Mhm.
everyone, as you said, experience stress, stressful situations and
Mhm.
circumstances. And then there are those persons who are diagnosed with mental disorders. Where do we draw the line between dealing with everyday stressors and dealing with mental health issues, illnesses, disorders, you
Mhm.
know?
So we each have a capacity that's different to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So what you experience, let us say you're, you got kicked out of school. I don't know your situation, but I'm giving you an example. Let's say you got kicked out of school and you're easy to maneuver through it. But I
Yeah.
got kicked out of school and it's the worst thing that could happen to me. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
struggling to really understand and process what happened to me
Right.
because of my response to what is happening. Many
Mm-hmm.
times it can put a stop and a halt in how I
Mm-hmm.
function in my everyday life. So when you
Mm-hmm.
realize that you cannot function in your everyday life, that is when you need to get help. So there's some
Mm-hmm.
persons, they're functioning, they're feeling low mood, their anxiety, but they're functioning. They're going to work, they're going to church, they're going
Mm-hmm.
out to fest, they're doing all the
Yeah. All the
things,
things. Yeah.
they're functioning. But then there's
Mm-hmm.
some persons who are experiencing just heavy emotions and they are not functioning. That is
Yeah.
when you know that you need extra help,
Extra
because
help.
sometimes you can do your self-care work, you can do your
Mm-hmm.
wellness work, but when you realize that in spite of all of it, I'm
Mm-hmm.
struggling, like I'm not able to even move through
Mm-hmm.
my day, that
Mm-hmm.
is when you know that you need mental health support from a
Right.
clinician. And then I want to say to that, because sometimes we in the Caribbean, we only wait until it's a crisis for us
Yes.
to get help.
I
So
was just
half of the
about to say.
people that come to session, they're at the
Mm-hmm.
end of their wits end. They've tried
Mm-hmm.
everything and they
Mm-hmm.
just want a fix right now. So I
Mm-hmm.
want us to move away from that, where even if it's just to help me to process my thoughts, even if it's just for me to absolutely gain a different perspective, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
just for me to talk out about what I am experiencing, see a
Mm-hmm.
mental health professional for the little things. Because I used to go to therapy, but I don't go to therapy because I'm feeling heavy or my anxiety or
Yeah,
anything
yeah,
of that
yeah.
sort. I go for maintenance purposes. So just
Ah,
like how you will go to your doctor for a checkup, you
yes.
need to go to your clinician for a checkup
Mm-hmm.
regularly. It's really
Mm-hmm.
important. So don't wait until it's a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
literally, it's supposed to be just an everyday relationship for you to kind of be a better person.
Mm-hmm.
I see someone here talking about highly functional depressed.
Depressed
Ooh,
people.
that's a heavy one.
Yes, I was just about to say.
Listen, that's
Yes.
a heavy one. You know who had you know Tasha Cobbs,
Mm-hmm.
the singer. So you know
Mm-hmm.
that she identified as a highly depressive individual.
Wow.
So she
Mm-hmm.
said she's on the praise team, singing, praising the Lord,
Functioning very
tears
much. Yeah.
functioning. Immediately after church, she goes back home. She locks herself in her room. She turns
Wow.
off the light. She goes into her bed. Nobody could hear from her. And
Wow.
when we think about highly functional depressives, that is what we mean. Those people are in the boardroom and they're
Mm-hmm.
winning. They're
Mm-hmm.
on social media and they're doing
And they're
great
doing the most.
things.
Yes.
You on the outside, you're looking at them and you're saying to myself, I want to be like them. I'm so
Yeah, you have no
inspired.
idea. Yeah. Yeah.
But when they go back by themselves, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, that
Mm-hmm.
is when they have to deal with the heavy weight of therapy,
Mm-hmm.
of depression. And so for that person, you ask the question, should that person go to therapy? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because eventually you will not be able to
Mm-hmm.
maintain the mass.
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, a lot of times it is too late. Sometimes you're thinking about hurting yourself.
Yes.
Sometimes you're
Yes.
thinking about hurting those who you love because, you
Mm-hmm.
just can't go on. And so
Mm-hmm.
many times we think that because we're functioning, we can push through it, but we do
Yeah.
not know when we're going to
Just
slip
yielding off.
over
Yeah. Yeah.
into that space where we would hurt ourselves because we know that
Mm-hmm.
depression, it changes the mind, it changes how
Yes.
we think about ourselves. And so a lot of times, you hear a lot of clinicians say it's not you talking, it's the depression
It's the
talking,
depression. Yeah.
it's the anxiety talking,
Yeah.
because it changes your self-talk.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
many times you may wonder, but I wonder how he could do this. He's such an
Yeah.
XYZ person. And it's
Mm-hmm.
really because the disorder has taken over their life
Over. Yeah.
and they don't even know who they are
To the point of we
anymore.
can't recognize it. I was just about to share there was a situation where this individual worked at the bank and he was the vibes master for the bank. He was always chirpy and on top of his game, getting all the awards. He has a family, married, everything. He was doing good. And then one day he came to work, left in the morning, and then an hour after that, they found out that he drank poison and killed himself. And everybody was like, but he seemed so okay. He seemed like he was functioning. He seemed like he was happy. He just had his third child and he's married and he's always laughing and always smiling. He just got an award. And I'm like, you don't know, what's happening up here.
You do not know. And many times we think that people who are depressed are sad. Hello, sadness
Listen.
does not mean that you are depressed. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a criteria. You do feel low mood, but it is not the only criteria. So
Yeah,
there are
yeah.
persons and I see this all the time, they have a diagnosable depression,
Mm-hmm.
and they are not sad like how you would think a depressed
Think,
person
yeah,
would be.
yep. Mm-hmm.
And so many times we have to, when we work with our mental health professional or our therapist, they really tell us, but you're not eating, you're not sleeping, you've lost it.
Mm-hmm.
They identify the criteria for you because
Yeah,
it is not only sadness. So you can
yes,
have the biggest smile on your face, but
yes.
you are struggling with this thing within you that you may
Yeah.
not even be able to tell or articulate to your partner. Because we
Mm-hmm.
know when, a lot of these things happen, the partner is just as surprised as the
Oh, yes.
society.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So sadness is a normal response. Sadness
But it's
is
not the only response.
it's not the only response. And just
Mm-hmm.
because you're feeling sad, and we have to think about, is my sadness relative to what is happening? So when you lose your job, you're not going to feel happy. You're not going to feel
Mm-hmm.
excited if you lose your job. You're going to feel
Exactly.
upset. You're going to be sad.
Yeah,
If your child dies, you're going to feel sad. You're going
exactly.
to go
Mm-hmm.
through that bereavement. So there's a normal sadness that we experience when
Experience.
bad
Mm-hmm.
situations happen. But when we see it
Right.
lasting for more than 2 weeks and we go into those diagnosable conditions, that is when we
Mm-hmm.
need to really say, this is not normal. I need
Yeah.
some extra support.
Sure. Boy, it's a lot. Like the
It's a
human being is
lot.
so complex, the amount of things that we process.
Listen, I do not know how God deals with us because we are so complex.
Complicated. We make it complicated for ourselves. Oh my goodness. Guys, this thing about checking on your strong friends, the people who always seem so happy and positive and chirpy and good, check on these people, you know.
Mhm. And I see
So
someone here said that sometimes people use laughter and humor to cover their actual
to cover.
emotions.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh
It's
yeah.
deflection. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. Um, so then Tricia, after a day or weeks of, helping others, hearing other person's struggles, their challenges, we know that you have your own mental health that you deal with. How do you decompress, or what does that look like for you? Do you talk to other counselors?
Mm-hmm. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think about it's emotionally exhausting at times,
Mm-hmm.
because you are dealing with other person's
Mm-hmm.
problems and you have to be
Mm-hmm.
so intentional about making room for your own self-care. So I
Yes.
think about the oxygen mask analogy, where
Mm-hmm.
even before I could help you, I need to make sure that I'm doing what is
You're good. Yes.
necessary.
Yes.
What is necessary. And I think my wellness, tips have changed over time. So I
Mm-hmm.
find right now what helps me is unplugging from social media, putting my phone on do not disturb, sleeping, taking a day to myself. I think for me, especially with COVID-19, because we've received a lot of cases because
Mm-hmm.
of this pandemic, um, really meditating helps. And
Mm.
I think, as a clinician, we know that Jesus is the master clinician. We know this, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We know that greater than all the greats. He
Oh
is
yeah.
the greatest therapist, and really and
Mm-hmm.
truly being with him. Yeah, I wake up a bit extra early and I spend time. That has really helped to center me.
Mm-hmm.
What has helped to center me as well is movement. That has helped to center me. And before, I was very particular about becoming a vegan because I know how food can impact your body. And when you're
Mm-hmm.
highly stressed, what you
Mm-hmm.
eat really
Really.
impacts your mood. So
Yeah.
I'm very intentional about my life and making space for nurturing myself in the process. And then I
Mm-hmm.
see a therapist as well. So I would have mentioned that I went to therapy.
Right.
When
Yeah.
I went through my breakup, I also maintained that relationship. And we
Mm-hmm.
speak about stuff, and we have other persons within the fraternity where, you speak to your bones,
Yeah. Bones
ideas
with
off
you as well.
of.
Yeah.
You don't speak about your clients because we know that you have to be
Yes.
confidential,
Yes.
but you really level with them as a
Mm-hmm.
professional. And I think that really helps as well. So
Yeah.
if your therapist does not have a therapist, you need to check that. And that's a question, because when you go to do a consultation with your therapist, you need to
Mm-hmm.
ask some questions. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
one of the questions that you need to ask, because you
Do
want to
you
make
have a
sure that,
therapist? Yeah.
do you have a therapist? You want to make sure that who is he helping you is taking
Yeah.
care of themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And if they don't and they give you an attitude, you should probably find somebody else.
You should.
You should. Um, but that's pretty good though. That's really good. Sugar for Your Heart, your ministry. It's a
Mhm.
really awesome name. Tell us a little bit about that and how it syncs with what you do as a mental health advocate and practitioner.
So the truth is, Sugar for Your Heart really started as a blog, and it
Mm-hmm.
started as a blog to speak about spiritual health.
Mm-hmm.
And I really felt compelled as I began to really, fine tune the vision for my life, really to maintain that health aspect, but
Mm-hmm.
expand it. And so now we deal with emotional and mental health. And the truth is, it has grown bigger than what I would have envisioned it to grow, as we have
Mm-hmm.
2 community projects. So we
Mm-hmm.
have group therapy sessions for females 16 to 35, where we meet, or
Mm-hmm.
we met, because we can't meet now.
Yeah,
So
anymore.
where
Yeah.
we meet once a month and we go through group therapy. And then we
Mm-hmm.
have for males where we literally go through their mental health struggles. And the
Mm-hmm.
amount of persons who respond and they come and they share is is a blessing. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
so proud that half of the persons who come, they engage in individual therapy, and that to me is great news, because when you think about a small island and the stigma that's around mental health, and you have
Mm-hmm.
young persons under 35 saying, I want to change my family history, I want to change the narrative of my life, I
Mm-hmm.
want to go to therapy, it warms my heart. It really,
Yeah.
really does. So
Yeah.
we're going to expand.
Mm-hmm.
And I can honestly say God is my strategist, because there are times where I'm approached for opportunities that I wouldn't have even thought of on my own. And then
Wow.
that your networking with certain persons can get you only so far. But when God
Yes.
does his
Yes.
thing, when
Yes.
he
There are
does his
no
thing, you enter
boundaries.
spaces where you don't even consider that you're qualified
Mm-hmm.
to enter. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about what the next stage will look like, and I'm excited
Mm-hmm.
about how it will expand. But I'm really
Mm-hmm.
focused on the Eastern Caribbean, because within our small islands, there is so much work to be done. So much work to be done. And I know that
Yeah.
a lot of clinicians, they leave. A lot of clinicians, we go off to the
Mm-hmm.
US
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
wherever where we can make the money,
Mm-hmm.
but our
Mm-hmm.
people still suffer. And so
Yeah.
right now the passion is to help the Eastern Caribbean
Mm-hmm.
in the capacity of campaigns, of community programs, and obviously through
Nice.
content.
Nice. That's so beautiful. Like I said, what you're talking about is right up my alley. I swear, do you find that sometimes as you assist persons with their issues, you in turn help solve and find other understanding for your own struggles?
Yeah, so absolutely. So there are times where you may not even consider yourself a bit evolved or a bit
Mhm.
healed, and you're connecting with someone, and it's when you are relating to them, you realize, yo, I've grown so
I agree.
much. The
Yeah,
old me would not have been able to deal with this so well.
yeah.
And I really think it's divine positioning, because
Mm,
it's God, I think, sometimes placing you in positions to let you know you've grown, even though you don't
yes,
acknowledge it.
yeah, yeah.
But there are times where we want to help persons, and
Mm-hmm,
we struggle to help them, and we
mm-hmm,
become overwhelmed with their struggle. And so we have to
yeah,
be mindful of that. We do want to help persons, but we can't fix anyone. We can't help anyone. They literally have to want it for themselves.
oh
But there
yes,
are
definitely.
times where we will absolutely, absolutely look at a person and we can say, yo, I'm a better person because of our
Yeah.
interaction.
Mm-hmm,
It
mm-hmm.
happens. It happens a lot.
Somebody say, God bless you and give you all the resources you need to assist people. Yes, yes. So at this point, what are some of the myths, stigmas related to mental health that you'd like to debunk?
I think one that I see, especially within, I can speak to St. Kitts, is that children don't have mental health issues, and children do.
Mm,
Children do.
mm, mm.
Children do, and
Yes,
their
definitely.
manifestations, their criteria for the disorders, they
Mm-hmm.
show themselves differently.
Yeah.
And so children do, a lot of children, we know of persons at the age of 7. And
Mm-hmm.
when we think about persons who are experiencing anxiety and depression, we think 7 is a very young age, but we know of
Mm-hmm.
persons who have been diagnosed at
Wow.
7, persons at
Wow.
14. And so
Mm-hmm.
children do experience mental health illnesses. So
Wow.
it's not that much a bad mind, and they're horrible, and they're wet in their bed, and they
Like
don't know
I'm
when
hard
to
of
shut up.
hearing.
Hello. They can be dealing with a mental health illness.
Yeah.
That's one of the ones that I continue to struggle with. And so I don't know in Jamaica, I don't know if you guys
Oh
still
yes.
punish in school. Do you guys give lashes in school still? Tell me more.
Well, I I'd like to say no, but it does happen in some spaces. It
So
does.
we
And
it
yeah,
it
yeah.
happens here as well. And so sometimes it's really the child acting out
Mm-hmm.
because of a struggle that they don't even know how to articulate themselves
Mm-hmm.
about. They don't know how to give language to it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I know of my friend's child right now. I continue to say, make sure you talk to her and tell her, it's okay to
yes,
be anxious and how to,
yeah.
because children model your
Oh,
behavior.
yes, they're very
So then
observant.
she was telling me the other night that her daughter was in the bedroom in the dark telling her dolly, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You don't have to be scared. You don't have to be
So you know it's
scared.
working. Yeah,
So you know your child then is a bit anxious because of COVID-19. They're not seeing their friends.
yeah.
They can't go out. But children do experience mental health disorders. Another
Mm-hmm.
one that I hear is that church people don't have mental health issues or
Oh,
should not have
geez,
mental health
yes,
issues. So
yes,
we know that, a lot of persons say if you have the fruit of the spirit, if you have the
yeah,
fruit of the spirit, you should not be depressed or anxious. Be anxious for
yes,
nothing.
yes,
But depression does not, or a mental health disorder, whether it's anxiety, depression, it does not discriminate. It
yes.
does not
It does not know
discriminate. And
age.
many
Mm-hmm.
times, many times, that is where we see the healing hand of God because of
Mm.
our own mental health struggle.
Oh, yeah,
So we know that some persons, they pray and they get better one time.
yes.
But we know that some persons, they pray to God, God, take away my anxiety,
God
depression.
will.
And they're struggling for 5 years. So we
Mm-hmm.
have to be extremely mindful that even though I'm a believer, I can
Mm-hmm.
still experience a mental health illness because I'm human. And
Mm-hmm.
we know that we are all vulnerable. And it only takes one situation
Yes,
for
yes.
us to kind of move on the end of the continuum. Another one that
Mm-hmm.
I hear a lot is that you're in the Caribbean, what do you have to worry about? Life is
Yes, just
slow.
breathe.
Life is slow.
Oh,
What are you worrying
Jesus.
about? Do you guys
Yeah.
and hello, you're from Jamaica, so everybody say everything. Irie,
Yes, everything good, man. Nice. Yes.
I constantly hear this. All we need to do is go to a fete or go to the beach and we'll be
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Caribbean people do experience mental health
Oh, yes.
illness as well. That's a huge that's a huge one. You can live
Yes.
by the beach and still have
And still
anxiety.
have
Like
anxiety and stress and depression and all of that stuff.
and
Boy.
another one I hear is that mental health uh, persons who suffer with it, that they are violent. And many
Mm-hmm.
times, many times, persons who struggle, they are the ones who are the victims of violence because
Mm-hmm.
of this stigma. So,
Mm-hmm.
you we are not always, they're not always violent. There are a small percentage that are violent, and then
Mm-hmm.
there are others who are not. And so
Yeah.
many times a lot of persons are afraid to go to them because, especially when they are in the wellness centers in our community,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they're afraid to even reach out to them because they're afraid that they will be attacked.
That, yes, I was just about to
They're gonna get,
say, yes.
but not all are obviously
Mm-hmm.
violent, and that's a huge myth. That's a huge
Mm-hmm.
myth. And then the last one I want to share with you is that a lot of persons would feel because you grew up in a good home, you
You have
went to
nothing to worry
school,
about.
well,
Yeah.
your parents is XYZ, you
You
have
have a
nothing to
job.
worry
Yeah.
about. You get
Mm-hmm.
a job, you're working at whatever bank, because in the
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean, when you work at the bank, you're
The
you're
bank, or
it.
a lawyer,
You're a
or you're a
lawyer or
doctor.
you're a
Oh,
doctor.
yes.
But it really has no respect of your of how you grew up really and truly, because we know
Mm-hmm.
persons grew up in well balanced environments, but
Mm-hmm.
they are experiencing some heavy emotional issues because of whatever is happening internally. So
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
another one I want to debunk. So when you hear a person say, "But why you got to be sad about? Why you got to be
Yeah.
depressed about?" It's a real thing. Doesn't matter how
Mm-hmm.
many good things are happening in your life, you
Mm-hmm.
literally
Okay.
can still, you're still susceptible to a mental health
Oh, yeah.
disorder
Oh, yeah.
if you don't do the things to take care of
To take
yourself.
care of yourself. Yeah. Yeah. So, how can persons reach out to you and your ministry?
So persons can reach out through our DMs. So we have social media accounts. So it's Sugar for Your Heart,
Mm-hmm.
Be Well and Bloom, My Elephant Tales. you can reach out to us and we connect you with a mental health professional, or we help you, or you can tune into one of our sessions. And we also have a website. So we have sugarforyourheart.org that persons can send us an email if they want to do workshops, if they want to do sessions, if they want to do just move through some wellness movements. It's really important that we give persons a good option of reaching out to us. So we're on social and we're also on our website. And if you want to share your ideas with how we can make it, dynamic, we welcome it. We welcome it as well.
Yes. I mean, I'm looking forward to so much more work with you. It's amazing what is in my head that I would love to share with you. Like I said, what you're doing is right up my alley, more than you know. So to the persons who are feeling unworthy and unloved and ashamed because of the weight on their emotions and the strain of mental health, what word of encouragement would you leave with them?
That you are worthy, that you are loved, and there is nothing to be ashamed of. I find that many times we don't own our story, and your story can be extremely gruesome. Your story can be something, when you hear it, you cringe on the inside. It doesn't matter. That is your story. What is important is, what do I do with that story? And so I want you to know that even if you started off or you had to handle XYZ growing up, or you've been dealt so many bad cards in life, you do have the capacity and the power to shift that narrative. And many persons shift that narrative through therapy. Many persons shift that narrative through a support group. Many persons shift that narrative through positive self-talk, because we know that a lot of negative thoughts come into our minds. You have the power to reshape the narrative of your life. You're not powerless. What you started with does not have to mean what you end with. And so sometimes we have to really begin testing out different ways of maintaining our wellness. Just maybe practicing a gratitude thing every day, speaking positively to ourselves, and we will see that slowly we begin to shift the narrative of our lives. And when people look at us, they would say, but she doesn't even look like what she went through. Or he doesn't even look like what he went through. We don't even know, like, you don't even know, because you have literally taken the steps to do the deep work and to shift the narrative of your life. So it first starts off with owning your story, no matter what it is. This is what happened to me. Okay, if you want to chat me, okay, fine. But the thing is, what are we going to do with it now? What are we going to do with it now? And that is where growth takes place. That is where healing takes place. But you cannot heal what you have not acknowledged. You cannot heal or work on what you are still in denial over. You cannot fix what you don't even want to face.
You don't want to confess.
And I wanna say this because I deal with women who are abused as well, and sometimes the memories are just so gruesome. They're so traumatic that you don't even want to face those things. But if you maybe work with a therapist to help you, to kind of coax you into facing them, exposing yourself to the memories really slowly, they will help you to kind of own that story and rebuild that story. And then I tell persons, we're believers, and there are times where we can't even give language to what we're experiencing. We can't even describe what we're experiencing. And the Bible, what does the Bible say? We have an advocate. We have an advocate. And the Holy Spirit understands our groanings, honestly. So sometimes you do have to engage in your spiritual discipline. You're praying to God, you're asking for guidance, and He will maybe direct you into who's a Christian therapist to go to see, maybe some persons may not have the natural positive affirmations to speak to themselves, but they can begin with maybe some Bible promises. They can, so they may not be able to come up with positive words, but they can start with Bible promises. They may not be able to look at the positive things in everything, but the Bible
Mm-hmm.
might, while they're doing their
Well,
meditations,
yeah,
the Holy Spirit
guide
brings
you.
back something that comes to
Mm-hmm.
your mind and
Mm-hmm.
really shows you a different way of
A
seeing
different
the
perspective.
situation, a
Mm-hmm.
different perspective. And so the point is, no matter what you are feeling, you are worthy, you are loved, but you first have to own your
Own
story
your stuff.
before
Yep.
you even can begin the deep work.
Mm-hmm. My goodness. Woo! We unpacked a lot of stuff,
We did.
Dentrecia.
I can go
I
for two
am.
more hours.
We are feeling the same thing. But this was, I mean, this was awesome. This was, I can't even find the word, but it was so powerful. And I'm so appreciative of the fact that you've allowed us to, interview you. You've agreed to do this with us. And I'm pretty sure the viewers are blessed by everything that you had to share. I'm blessed because there are certain things I didn't know about that I had yet to, I guess, acknowledge. And so I want to thank you so, so much for taking out this time to talk to us, to share with us, to, hail all the way from St. Kitts.
Yes.
And are there any last words that you want to leave before we leave here?
Absolutely. So I want to speak about, because I know in the Caribbean, we don't want to go to a therapist. We think that is, between us, that is white people business. Black people ain't gonna call
Yeah,
do therapy.
yeah, yeah.
um, so I want to let you know that you do need to connect with someone who understands your culture. So I would
Mm-hmm,
really speak to, you guys, you have a mental health association. Start
mm-hmm,
there to
mm-hmm.
get some licensed
Like,
support or persons who are highly experienced to deal
mm-hmm,
with what you may be going through, and make sure
mm-hmm.
you connect with them, because it's a relationship, and so you don't
Yeah,
want to be spilling your guts to somebody who
to somebody
you
who
don't
just,
feel comfortable with.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
sometimes you may have to shift over a therapist maybe 3 times before you find someone who really connects with you.
Mm-hmm,
That is okay.
mm-hmm.
But we as Caribbean people, we do have excellent support professionals in the
In
region
the
who
rhythm.
speak our language, who
Mm-hmm.
understand our struggles, who absolutely are willing to help us. And I
Yeah.
want you guys to think about what are the resources I have in Jamaica or wherever you're
Mm-hmm.
listening to help me to
So,
move through what I'm going through. Because with therapy, with your
mm-hmm.
exercise, with your affirmations, with your support group, you know,